Welcome into Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me is the old left-hander, Ross Grimsley,
How you doing, buddy?
number 48 with the Cincinnati Reds. And we're excited to be talking to one of the most knowledgeable folks in the sport of Major League Baseball, and that is from the Power Alley, Jim Duquette. We're going to talk to Jim in just a second after I tell you about the Costas Inn. Costas Inn, located 4100 North Point Boulevard. Everybody in Birdland knows they are the preeminent place to go for your steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, steaks, salads, desserts, anything. And the other thing about the Costas Inn, it's important to tell you, they're open for business. They're doing a booming business. There's still some of us that aren't quite comfortable going in and sitting in close proximity to a lot of people. So the Costas Inn has stepped up their game in the curbside world. You can order online at costasinn.com, pay for it online, and then pick it up, and you don't even have to get out of your car. Call the Costas Inn 410-477-1975, or as I said, just go to costasinn.com to order your food. As I said, with us is Jim Duquette. Jim is a former assistant general manager, former general manager in Major League Baseball, and he's been manning the microphones at Sirius Radio. It's got to be, what, 14, 15 years now, Jim?
It is going to be 15 years in September, and end of this September, right after I left the Orioles, and I ended up getting a little tryout for Sirius XM. It was new on the scene. It was actually, at that time, it was just XM because Sirius and XM were separate companies. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try this for a year, see if it works. And I've been basically trying it for a year
until I get back in Major League Baseball, until I get hired again. Well, you got you, Phillips on TV is Dan O'Dowd. Several executives. Are you comfortable now that this is where you're at, or would you still love to get an opportunity to run a ball club again?
Yeah, I think that the more you do this, the more you realize that you have other interests that are outside of the front office. Your lifestyle changes much. I was able to finally spend some time coaching some of my kids' softball and baseball that I never had the opportunity to do when I was in the front offices. I missed so many events and whatever. So it's really been a lifestyle change more than anything else. And until I was introduced to this through the former owners of the Mets there, the Wilpons, and even locally with Tom Davis, who gave me a lot of training in the Mass studios off camera, trying to figure out what's a two shot and a one shot. Here's your solo, and I'm going, what is a solo? What do you mean two shot, Tom? Like, he's explaining me all these things. And now I do, pre and post for the Mets, still about 30 or so games up in New York for SNY, as well as the radio. I'm like, dude, I can't imagine doing anything different now.
Before I turn you over to Ross for a couple of questions about the Orioles season, rule changes, postseason preview, working with Mike Farron, I've grown to really, really respect his knowledge of the game. Does he keep you on your toes? Seriously, I know you know the game, but he doesn't miss a beat on much.
No, he's really good. He was doing radio there and pre and post radio for the Diamondbacks there for several years. That's why he moved to Arizona. And he's a guy that really he self-taught himself the game. He's analytically minded. He critically thinks about the sport. Like, he is consumed like we are, like the three of us on this call are, in terms of the baseball. It did it, has done it in a different way, and he loves it. And I think that's the thing. The passion that he has for the sport kind of comes out on the radio, and certainly in our program. But for him as a host, he does a great job. He's tied into the amateur community as well, doing a lot of stuff for Perfect Game, that big national travel ball and showcase event company. So he he loves it. He does college baseball as well. Had college baseball on ESPNU on Sirius XM. So he's got a lot of things going right now, both on the amateur and professional side of things.
I know Ross is chomping at the bit. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah.
Hey, Ross.
Thanks for being with us. First of all, it's really great to have you.
Great to see you guys.
You're talking about getting back into it, running a team, general manager in this day and age. How much different is it now compared to years ago for a general manager or somebody running an organization?
I would say this. It is different in the sense that, like, when I was still right there at the end of my Mets and then Orioles years, we were the analytics, the statistically minded and stat departments were starting to come on the scene. I created the first one for the Mets, and then Flanny and I, when we were together, we were trying to get some legwork done for the Orioles side of things, but it hadn't really exploded yet. It was still on. It was the beginning of the scene. Jim Beattie prior to me was trying to do some things as well, and as I'd say in the last 5 or 6 years, it's just exploded. Some of these statistically and analytics departments where there's coding, a big portion of an interview process and teams that are adding employees in their front office. You have to be able to code now and do things that we would have never imagined doing when we were in the front office. So it's different in that sense. The ideas still are similar, and some of the predictive models that we were trying to create have advanced, and it's gotten better and better. And I can't even believe how big the departments have got. You'll hire 15 or 20 people in the analytics department alone. I remember when I started with the Mets, we had one guy, and then it turned into two, but I had to beg and plead for the second guy. And the third guy was an intern that we couldn't pay, so that was the extent of our statistical analysis. And that was, all right, it was probably 20 years ago now, right. 18 years ago. However, so that part has really, really ramped up. So is the sports performance. So is the medical side of things. So it's just, I cannot believe how much it's grown, and general managers now, they only have two department heads at the top, president of baseball operations and general manager, and then several assistants. And it's just so big. It's probably tenfold what it was when I was there my last year.
Yeah. How is Showalter? What has he meant to that Met team?
Boy, we saw it down here a lot. Just like the veteran presence, the no nonsense, attention to detail, the ability to manage the star player in the there's a couple of declining veterans that he handles so well, that handles the rookies, like the veteran understanding the rules, handling the bullpen, all of those things that we saw in 12 and 14, 16, like all the years that they were in the postseason, that has come out, and he's been given a much higher payroll where there's even margin for error every once in a while. And I think his steady hand and his ability to handle the media has been such a big plus, more so than maybe even we saw here in Baltimore, because there's so many more media requests, opportunities, challenges, questions, and he handles it like he's been there, like you would expect. Like he's been on the scene for 30 years. It's really impressive how he's handled it.
That's even after sitting out for three years.
Yeah, exactly, Stan. I think we see this a lot too. Like some of those guys that go to the network and they kind of look at it and view it from a little different lens. I always felt it was helpful even when I got into the broadcasting and media side of things, to be able to see 30 teams, right? I get to go to the postseason and every league championship and World Series I've been going to for the last 14 years for Sirius XM. And you get to see things in a different way. You get to go into the clubhouses of what winning teams do, right? When Buck is a manager, gets to see things and see a broader vision of what's going on around the league, who the good teams are, who some of the good young players are, and compare them to the ones that you're exposed to on an everyday basis, that helps your pool of players, your evaluation skills. There's so many advantages that you have, so that if you ever do go back into it like Buck has, I think he has a better understanding of what the league-wide pool of talent is, and what his talent, how do you compare your own talent to, what other teams have.
How does he incorporate the analytical end of it, or does he, as much as I know it's there for him, but a lot of it is kind of somewhat self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
what I mean? Yeah.
I do. A lot of these, see, the thing that's always fascinating about it is, like, some of the good organizations, they were using analytics from the very beginning, right? The platoons that we saw in San Francisco last year, Earl Weaver was using them at the very beginning. He didn't have all the statistical abilities to study, but he eyeballed it. He
had index cards.
He had index cards, right? And he had experience, right? And I think what is lacking in today's game is the experience out there. You don't get you don't have as much experience in front offices. You don't have as much, for the most part, experience in the dugout, and that's where Buck, it's such a huge advantage, is he can take the high-end analytics, and they're still formulating their own department, just growing, because it's year one under new ownership there in New York. Take what they bring down and present to Buck each night, and then Buck has the ability to kind of sort through what he likes, what he doesn't like, use what he likes, and really enhance it, right? So his experience will tell one story, the analytics might tell another, and you marry the two, and it's usually the best of both worlds. That's usually how good organizations run.
Right. That's the hardest thing, to blend the two. That's been, I've seen that. Yeah.
Jim, the other day I opened up CBS Sports and I saw this article about Joe Madden and some comments he made. And I thought they were fascinating and are apropos to what we're talking about. And it didn't sound like it was sour grapes that that's what cost him his job, right? But he made the comment, he goes, my players need like nuggets of information. The analytics come in and give them a dissertation. And he said, it's just too much. Do you think it's gotten to be too much?
I think in some cases it has. Yeah. I think what Joe got criticized, of course, in the analytic world, because he's kind of raining on a little bit of what some of these teams are trying to do.
Yeah.
But I think his point, maybe it got lost in it a little bit of what he was trying to say, which was, there's a way to the information that's brought down has to be processed by the player eventually. Somebody has to translate it for the player. And there are a lot of guys who don't like to look at it, and there are some who like to look at it a lot. And there's in between that as well, that spectrum. And so who is the person that's relaying that information? It can't be guys in the front office who didn't play, who didn't really understand what it's like to go through a 162 game schedule and spring training and in the postseason. I mean, it's an 8-month season when you consider all of those months. The people who should be explaining it are either former players that are now coaches, or the coaching staff themselves, to help kind of translate and sort through what information is meaningful for the player. And how does that kind of translate, and how does that help you teach? And Joe explained this, by the way. I don't know if you saw the ESPN broadcast last night, but he kind of went into a little bit more depth in that maybe he didn't when he was on Jason Stark's podcast. So I think as I heard his explanation, it made total sense to me how he meant it. And we probably have gone too far in certain circumstances. But here's the thing: when I was involved, I first started out in the front office, we had computers that were just coming on the scene, and you had to write up reports and enter them into the computer. It was supposed to be a time-saving measure, but there were a lot of scouts at the time that didn't like that transition. But the idea was to streamline things, to hold people accountable for what they wrote, and to have access to it immediately. And that was a kind of a front office style change that had, it went from, the dark ages into the current. And the guys who adapted to it eventually are the ones that were still scouting 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like with the analytics, analytics are not going away.
Nope.
And they're here to stay. And it may be tweaked and it may not use them as much, but they're here. And so you're better off trying to embrace it than to buck it. Because if you don't invite it, then you end up usually on the sideline. So there's some good baseball people that I think have been incorporating it and shouldn't be that difficult to make that transition.
So let's morph over into these rule changes. MLB announced them. And first I got to ask you, what about the timing of this? Why isn't that something that should have been announced, even if they knew it internally, that they should have announced during the offseason? But right in the middle of the pennant race, we get new rules, the 30-second clock, shift rule, and larger bases. You want to just go on those?
Yeah, I would say that, all of them kind of have this, there's evolution starting point, right? So we've seen this, the pitch clock. I think it's a hitter's clock too. It's both. Yeah. Hey, hitters have got to be in a box. Pitchers got to be ready to pitch. So we've seen this in the minor leagues now for years, and this was coming. We knew this was coming. This wasn't a real big change. That was just a matter of when it was going to happen, not if. And I think they just they were hoping to get more support from the players previously, and they didn't. So now with the new CBA, they wanted to make sure they had this ability to do it without having a ton of interference with the union. Right. And so I think that part of it is the time. And once they kind of cleared that hurdle, then we could start to see some of these other things. I think I saw one statistic on the shift, banning the overshift, that on balls that were hit on the ground, 110 miles an hour or more, the differential in the batting average was over 100 points. There's no question that the shift has prevented hits from occurring.
No question about
it. Otherwise, teams wouldn't do it as much as they do. So I think for me, and so we've got out of sort a little bit. We had hitters trying to hit it over the shift rather than trying to hit the ball the other way. And we've seen a little bit of hitting the other way, but not nearly as much as I thought would happen. So now I think we're at a point where we got to change the rule to make it a little bit more fair on that side of it for the lefty hitters.
So now you have two men have to be on each side of second base, right, and they all have to be no further back than the outlying boundary to the outfield. They have to be on the dirt, essentially
on the dirt. Right. Exactly. And that part of it, like I wouldn't mind if somebody wanted to play if you got the infielders on both sides of second base and you wanted to have the second baseman play out on the grass, they should be able to, personally. Let them play out there. They're going to miss out on an opportunity for balls hit in the infield on infield single that would, I think, occur more often than not. But even now, I think we'll see some tweaks over the next couple of seasons. But for now, this is the route that they want to go. And I've been for it. I didn't like the overshifting. When I started to hear players like Buster Posey come out against the overshifting, that cemented my feelings about the advantages. Now, listen, I'd be curious. Ross got pitchers. For the pitchers can't like it. I think it's definitely help the offense, but the offense has really suffered over the last couple of years.
I heard a stat about 3 years ago. I'm listening to a preseason game. Tampa Bay was playing, and they said the two announcers, Andy Freed and Dave, I forget Dave's last name. They were talking about Joe Maddon's first year managing the Tampa Bay Rays. Left-handed hitters in Major League Baseball averaged about 268 or 270. By 3 years ago, it was like 238. Yeah. So, to take 30 points off of a left-handed batting average, that's what did Chris Davis in my opinion. Yeah. It went to his head that he couldn't get base hits.
It really did. And if you look at just why the infielders are shifted, right? You take the third baseman, take him all the way over to where the shortstop is, right? And the second, shortstop goes out on the other side of second base. And second base goes out in the shallow right field. Now, unless that left-handed hitter can hit the ball down the line, which some can. I mean, Tony Gwynn can certainly do it.
Yeah,
He can do it
Wade
with his eyes
Boggs
shut,
could.
right?
Yeah,
Boggs,
sure.
he could, right? But today's hitters, left-handed hitters, and certainly Chris Davis couldn't do it, and a lot of guys couldn't. And so, when you look at 90% of the balls that are hit on the ground, and it's hit right into where the players are. Now, versus right-handed hitters, you can't take the first baseman all the way over to second base because he can't get over to first to cover the bag if the ball's hit on the ground. So, right-handed hitters do have that huge hole on the right side that I've seen them take advantage of that isn't there for the lefty hitters.
I don't want to.
You know what's crazy, Jim?
Ross, we only got about 2 or 3 more minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick, but with the left-handed hitters in the shift, the pitchers are pitching them hard away.
I know.
That is mind-boggling to me. Here it is, hit the ball that way. I just
and they still can't do it.
Yeah,
they still.
They're giving them the opportunity to do it.
Well, Jeff McNeil
with the pitch clock, I can't believe that organizations I don't know why they need it, because as a pitcher, you want your pitchers to get the ball, get on the mound, get the sign throw, get the ball, work as quick as you can. It keeps the defense sharp. It keeps the hitters off balance. And I can't believe they don't they don't want their pitchers to do that. So the pitch clock is fine with me. I don't. I just
guys like yourself would, and I have a problem with it, right? I think the relief pitchers that are throwing 98 miles an hour, the more you do that and the quicker you have to do that, your arm doesn't have the chance to recover. In theory, that's what the thought process is. The sports performance guys are saying, well, they'll be impacted. They maybe won't be throwing as hard as they do now. We'll see. We're going to wait. We're not even sure. There's always unintended consequences, by the way, when you add rules that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we let you go, Jimmy, 3 teams in the National League. Dodgers, overwhelming, they're 20 games in front of San Diego. The Mets and Atlanta, neck and neck. To me, those are the 3 teams that could get into the World Series. Give me a sort of a bird's eye view of the 3 teams, who you like to get out of there.
Well, all 3 of them, I think, are capable of representing the National League. I think they're all really talented and deep. There's always strengths for all of them. There's weaknesses. For me, I watched the Dodgers a fair amount.
Yeah.
Their starting pitching, every aspect of them is really good. I don't know about their back end of the bullpen and how that's going to go. Kimbrel's a little shaky for me, and the high end starters that we're used to seeing, especially Buehler, who's not going to be healthy.
Yep.
That's where I have my little issue with them. We'll see if they always find a way though. They're amazing. Mets, for me, their bullpens, their Achilles. I think that, and we'll see on the power component that it's gotten better since the trade deadline, but it's been a little weaker over the last 2 weeks. So we'll see on the power component there.
And Atlanta, and then the Braves real fast. I'm thinking you like them a lot.
I really like Atlanta. I think they're especially the way they've been playing over the last 90 games. It's hard to find a weakness with them. Maybe the big weakness for them is they don't make as much contact. They have power, but there's you have the ability to pitch to them a little bit more. But man, it's a fierce lineup. Oof, you can't make mistakes with the Dodgers or Atlanta. You can't make mistakes in that lineup. I think they're the deepest all the way around when you look at them. But having said all that, they just lost 2 or 3 to Seattle over the weekend. So. I think that's why I think they're all kind of, you could bunch them all together, kind of mix them up in a hat, and probably 5 out of 10, or 35% of the time it'd be Dodgers, 35% of the time would be Atlanta, and then the rest would be the Mets. And, it depends on how good your starting pitching is, which, by the way, I think the Mets have the best starting pitching if Scherzer and DeGrom are healthy.
Yeah. Last question, American League now. You got the Yankees, who got off that amazing start, faded. Maybe they're picking some momentum back up with Stanton back, and I think Rizzo will be back this week. Houston, and I'll give you a dark horse in the American League to me is Seattle. Yeah, they've got 20 games now against the 4 easiest teams in the American League. They may go into the postseason with a real head of steam.
Yeah, I like Seattle a lot. Their pitching is a lot better than people realize, too. They're starting a rotation with Castillo and Ray and Logan Gilbert. Those are really 3 good starting pitchers. Their bullpen is really good. despite the fact that they coughed up a lead in the ninth against Atlanta, but they came back. Their offense, I'm a little concerned about. That's the only issue for them there.
Yeah.
I like Houston. I think their pitching and bullpen, their experience is maybe the best of all of that group. We've seen some more weaknesses out of the Yankees than I expected.
Yeah.
I don't know about their offense now because of the injuries. I don't know about their start rotation. So, for me, I'm kind of with you. I like Seattle as a sleeper. I like Houston. The division for me, the league goes through Houston. Until you can knock them off, I think they're the favorite for me.
All right. Ross, last thing for Jim.
Oh, yeah. Real quick, Jim, tell us what you think about the O's.
Oh, I'm so happy and pleased. We've had a chance, Stan and I had a chance to talk recently about them and how exciting they are this year, and really unexpectedly came on the scene this year. I thought it might be next year that we saw it's what we've seen out of them. So, there's so many good young players, not just Adley, but I like what we've seen out of Henderson and Stowers and some of the players that we know are in the pipeline. Hopefully we'll see Grayson Rodriguez soon. But I think that everything turned when Rutschman came up, and even more so than when we brought Wieters up at the time.
Right.
Like this, Adley is another level than Wieters was. And I remember at the time, there was the comparison to Joe Mauer. Yeah. It was Mauer with power, right? With Wieters, right? Yeah. And with Adley, I don't know if do we have a moniker yet for Adley yet? Not yet, but. Yeah, I just love everything about his offense, his defense, his game calling, his relationship building. So I think that that in the end that's looked like it's turned out to be the right draft pick when they had that choice between he and Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah.
All right. He is Jim Duquette. He's heard every weekday from 10 to 1 on XM MLB Network with Mike Farron, the Power Alley. Jim, we really appreciate some time. I know we ran over a few minutes. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So hope to see you soon.
All right. For Ross Grimsley, Jim Duquette, I'm Stan the Fan. We'll see you next Thursday night. Gary Stein and I'll be on. Next Monday, we'll be on as well. We've been brought to you by the Costas Inn. We'll talk to you soon.